In the stark, unforgiving arena of a television courtroom, where the air crackles with unresolved grievances and the quest for justice is broadcast to millions, a family's decade-long secret, festering in the shadows of a broken promise and fractured relationships, was about to be dragged into the piercing light by the one woman who tolerates no excuses, the formidable Judge Judy. The case, which on its surface appeared to be a simple, almost mundane financial dispute over a repossessed truck, would unravel to reveal a shocking tapestry of betrayal, a stepmother's controversial past, and the heartbreaking use of innocent grandchildren as pawns in a bitter familial Cold War. A conflict so deep it had stolen Christmas presents and alienated a loving grandfather from the children he adored. The central figure in this drama, a man named David Dixon, sat with a quiet, weary dignity, his posture speaking volumes of the aggravation and disappointment he had carried for years, a weight that seemed to bow his shoulders as he prepared to confront the source of his heartache, his own son, Michael Dixon. The tension was immediate and palpable, a thick fog of unspoken words and old wounds that Judge Judy, with her legendary precision, began to slice through with her very first question, her voice cutting through the formalities to the raw core of the matter. "Mr. Dixon, this is your son?" The simple confirmation from David, a soft "yes, it is," carried the heavy weight of a father's love, now tarnished by necessity and legal action. The story Judge Judy began to piece together was one that started over a decade ago, a narrative of a young man's ambition and a father's supportive trust. Michael Dixon, now a 30-year-old man with a family of his own, had once been a 19-year-old boy with a dream of owning a powerful truck, a symbol of American independence and masculine pride. But dreams, especially for a teenager, often outpace financial reality, and young Michael's credit was non-existent, a common hurdle for youth that required a co-signer, a financial guardian angel who would vouch for him with the mighty credit companies. That angel was his father, David, a man who wanted nothing more than to see his son succeed, and who, with a signature filled with hope and paternal faith, co-signed the loan, binding his own financial future to the responsibility of his teenage son. For 2.5 years, the arrangement seemed to work. The son drove his prized truck. The father felt pride in his assistance, and the world, for a brief moment, seemed to be in order. But then, the wheels of Michael's life, and consequently his father's, began to fall off. The payments, those crucial monthly commitments that kept the financial wolves at bay, stopped abruptly. The reason was never fully explained in the courtroom. Was it youthful irresponsibility, a lost job, or simply a lack of care? But the consequence was devastatingly clear. The truck was violently repossessed, snatched away in the dead of night by faceless agents of the finance company, leaving behind not just an empty space in the driveway, but a gaping $1,000 hole of debt. The immediate aftermath of the repossession was a confusing time for David Dixon. According to his testimony, he received a letter from Chrysler, the company behind the loan, a piece of correspondence that he interpreted as good news, a declaration that the truck had been sold for more than what was owed, a clean slate, a zero balance. He filed that memory away, a closed chapter, and moved on with his life, blissfully unaware of the financial time bomb ticking away in the dusty files of a credit company's records department. For 8 long years, there was silence, a deceptive, peaceful silence that David mistook for resolution. He rebuilt his life, and in that process, he found love again, marrying a woman named Helen who became his stepmother, a new figure entering the already complicated family dynamic. Then, in July of 1996, the calm shattered. The past, which David had believed was dead and buried, erupted back into his life with the ferocity of a volcano. A lawyer's letter arrived, not a friendly reminder, but a cold, formal document of threat and impending legal action. It stated that the repossession auction had not covered the debt. There was a staggering deficiency of almost $4,400, a ghost from his son's past that had now come to haunt him. The credit company, having finally tracked down their co-signer, was now after David Dixon with a vengeance, threatening to drag him into court to garnish his wages, to upend the stable life he had worked so hard to create. Faced with this terrifying prospect, David, a man of his word, did what he felt was right. He agreed to a confession of judgment, a legal agreement to pay the balance in monthly installments of $200 to avoid a lawsuit. But a father's duty, he believed, did not end with his own sacrifice. He reached out to his son, the now 30-year-old Michael, who had set this entire catastrophe in motion a decade prior. David's voice, likely trembling with a mixture of fear and paternal disappointment, explained the situation to Michael. He laid out the facts: the repossession, the newly discovered debt, the threatening lawyers, and the $200 a month payment plan that would now be a drain on his finances for years to come. He told his boy that this was going to have to be taken care of. The response he received from his son was not one of remorse, not an offer to help, not a shared burden of responsibility. It was a cold, dismissive, and utterly shocking rebuttal. Michael just basically said it wasn't his problem. Those 6 words, "It wasn't his problem," became the battle cry of a son who refused to grow up. A declaration of war that would fracture the Dixon family for years to come. This was the moment the case transformed from a simple financial dispute into a Shakespearean tragedy of familial betrayal. The monetary issue was grave, but it was the emotional fallout that truly captivated the courtroom. As David and his wife Helen tried to elaborate, the true cost of Michael's refusal to accept responsibility was measured not in dollars, but in stolen moments and broken hearts. Helen, the stepmother, interjected with a voice cracking with raw emotion, pointing to a bag sitting near them in the courtroom. "Your Honor," she said, her words pouring out in a pained torrent. "What gets me about this whole thing is our grandchildren. Our presents, the kids' presents, are sitting right here that they didn't get for Christmas." The image was jarring and powerfully symbolic. Wrapped gifts, meant for joyous, innocent children, sitting as evidence in a bitter adult conflict. A tangible representation of love withheld. This was not about a truck anymore. It was about access, about punishment, about using the most vulnerable members of the family as leverage. David and Helen revealed that this was not an isolated incident. It was a pattern. In 1996, when the financial trouble first surfaced, Michael and his wife had allegedly moved without providing a new address, cutting off the grandparents from their grandchildren for a devastating 5 months. The pain in David's voice was audible as he confirmed this, stating that his son had told him that, given the circumstances, it wouldn't be a good idea for us to see the kids. The grandchildren had become collateral damage in a war they did not understand, their smiling faces and outstretched arms used as weapons in a conflict over money. The plot thickened further, as Michael, cornered and defensive, offered his explanation for the estrangement, and in doing so, unleashed a shocking accusation that shifted the entire focus of the trial. He stated that his father was always welcome to visit, but pointedly, his wife Helen was not. When Judge Judy, with the relentless focus of a bloodhound, demanded to know, "Why is that?" Michael's answer was a bombshell. "'Cause," he stammered, "the reason we're here is 'cause of her." He then elaborated with a claim that painted his stepmother in a sinister light. "Well, this is what she does for a living." The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Judge Judy pressed him. "What do you mean? This is what she—" And Michael finished the sentence with a single, damning word: "sues." He accused Helen of being a litigious person, a serial suer who had several other cases that she's suing other people for. He concluded with a statement that was meant to absolve himself and blame his stepmother entirely. "If it was between my dad and I, we wouldn't be here." This was a dramatic attempt to reframe the narrative, to paint himself as the victim of a sue-happy stepmother who had manipulated his father into this courtroom drama. But the truth, as it always does under Judge Judy's piercing gaze, was not so easily manipulated. The legal facts remained stubbornly in David's favor. Judge Judy examined the confession of judgment, the legally binding document David had signed under duress. She established the clear, unassailable chain of responsibility. Michael bought the truck. Michael used the truck. Michael defaulted on the loan. David was the good guy, the co-signer, the guarantor who had done his son a monumental favor only to be left holding the bag, a bag that was rightfully, morally, and ethically Michael's to carry. In a masterful lecture that was both a lesson in law and a sermon on personal responsibility, Judge Judy dismantled Michael's flimsy defenses. "Your father merely did you a favor and said, 'I will guarantee the payment.' Certainly they can go after him, but it's your problem." "Don't you understand that?" Her voice rose with incredulity and frustration. "Sir? Well, there comes a time you have to grow up, sir, and accept responsibility for what you do." She then drew a powerful parallel, asking Michael if he took care of his own 3 children. When he proudly affirmed, "Oh yeah, very well," Judge Judy delivered the knockout blow. and you have a father who tried to do the same for you." It was a brilliant rhetorical move, holding up a mirror to Michael and forcing him to see the hypocrisy of his actions. He accepted the sacred responsibility of parenthood for his own children while shirking the fundamental responsibility he owed to the parent who raised him. Faced with this irrefutable logic and the moral force of Judge Judy's words, Michael's resistance began to crumble. The man who had boldly claimed the debt wasn't his problem was now being ordered by the court to make it his problem. Judge Judy issued an interim order, a brilliant legal compromise that acknowledged the current reality while providing a path for ultimate justice. She entered a judgment for David for the $1,600 he had already paid out of his own pocket, a tangible reimbursement for his financial pain. But she also placed the burden of the future squarely on Michael's shoulders. He was given a chance to prove his claim that the credit company was wrong, to unearth the paperwork that showed a paid repossession. But the key condition was that the aggravation, the phone calls, the letters, the legal threats, now belonged to him. He was to take over the fight. If he failed to prove the company wrong, he would be responsible for the remaining balance, with the threat of being dragged back to court by his own father if he refused. It was a verdict that addressed both the financial and emotional core of the dispute, forcing Michael to finally, after a decade of avoidance, fess up and act like the grown man he purported to be. The final bang of the gavel was not just the end of a case. It was the echo of a lesson delivered, a line drawn in the sand between childhood irresponsibility and adult accountability. Lesson for the listeners and viewers. The heartbreaking saga of the Dixon family serves as a stark and powerful warning to us all. It teaches us that a financial contract, especially one co-signed with love and trust, is not just a piece of paper. It is a sacred promise that carries the weight of a relationship. When we shirk our responsibilities, the cost is never merely financial. The true price is paid in the currency of broken trust, fractured families, and the innocent suffering of children caught in the crossfire. This case screams that there indeed comes a moment when one must grow up, to look in the mirror and accept the consequences of one's actions, not just for our own sake, but for the preservation of the bonds that matter most. Using children as pawns to punish or gain leverage is perhaps the most destructive act in a family conflict, one that leaves scars far deeper than any monetary debt. Let the image of those unopened Christmas presents forever remind us that no amount of money is worth the price of a grandparent's love or a family's unity. The duty to be honorable, responsible, and accountable is the foundation upon which all healthy families and societies are built.